Hi, I am Tammy Marshall, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to read to you a little bit of the beginning of the novella called Quitter that you can find in my collection of stories called State of Georgia and Other Writings. Quitter is the last story in the collection. There are 4 total, including the novel State of Georgia, 2 short stories, and then this novella called Quitter, in which a young man returns to his hometown to quit quitting. He's just been a quitter his whole life so far, and he wants to stop. And so he goes back to the place that he started quitting, which was the basketball team when he was in high school, and he works on quitting. He wants to quit quitting. So I'm going to read to you a little bit. This doesn't have chapters in it. It's just really one long story, but it does kind of section. So I'm going to read to you the first few pages of Quitter. Jeff was a quitter. He always had been, at least as far back as he could remember. Well, maybe not that far back, but certainly as far back as it really mattered, and he knew exactly when he had started down the quitting path. Now, here he was, 30 years later, still a quitter, with the ultimate irony in front of him. He knew how to quit everything, but he could not quit quitting. A week ago, after quitting the latest in a string of jobs, he'd made a decision. He needed to start over. That decision had brought him back to the small Nebraska town where he'd spent most of his formative years and where the quitting bug had hit him full force in the middle of his junior year of high school. He'd decided that the only way he could quit quitting was to go back and undo his first one. No one at his old school remembered him because all the staff from his high school years had moved on, retired, or died, but the basketball coach had been surprisingly open to Jeff's offer to help out with the team. The coach was nearing the end of a long career of coaching in numerous schools, and like most old coaches, he was tired. Having someone volunteer to help, free of charge, seemed like a blessing from above. Of course, Jeff hadn't explained his ulterior motive for wanting to help, and the coach hadn't asked. The first day he showed up for practice, Jeff hung around the sidelines, unsure of what to do. Finally, a ball bounced his way, and he picked it up. A player yelled, "Yo, dude, throw me the ball." At that, the coach turned and saw him lurking by the bleachers. He gestured for Jeff to come join him. Jeff threw the ball to the player, shoved his hands into his pockets, and strolled over to Coach Sands. The coach handed him a roster and a whistle. "The boys are wearing their practice jerseys, but the numbers are the same as their game jerseys. Get to know their names, and if you catch one of them doing something wrong, blow the whistle and make him do it right." For a moment, Jeff was overcome by the urge to run out of there. He wanted to quit before he'd even started. What did he really know about basketball after all? He'd quit the team in high school and hadn't played since. In fact, he seldom watched it on television, preferring reality TV instead, where people didn't quit. They were voted out. As he stood looking out at the small sea of boys scrimmaging on the 2 courts, his eyes fell on one who was erratically dribbling the ball and doing so much traveling that he ought to be holding a suitcase rather than a basketball. Before he could give more thought to abandoning his newly acquired position, Jeff heard a whistle and realized it was his own. He whistled again and strode purposely onto the court toward the traveler. The boys had all stopped and were looking quizzically at him. Jeff wrenched the ball from the boy's grasp. Quickly, he checked his roster for a name to go with number 10, Matt Westerfield. "Who taught you how to dribble, Matt? You're traveling all over the place." Matt glared at him. A few other boys snickered while the rest remained mute and looked shocked. One, who seemed to be a friend of Matt's, asked, "Who are you, mister?" Jeff looked around the gym and saw that all action had stopped and the boys were looking at him. "I'm Jeff Brown and I'm here to help your coach." Matt stepped toward him and said, "Coach doesn't need any help, especially from you." He slapped the ball out of Jeff's grasp and began to dribble it away. Out of the corner of his eye, Jeff saw the coach raise his whistle. Jeff waved a hand in his direction and then deftly knocked the ball out of Matt's hands. Stepping in front of the boy, he looked him squarely in the eyes and said, "Give me 10 laps." A gasp went up around him, along with some agreeing noises. Matt narrowed his eyes. "Do you know who I am?" Jeff nodded. You're a punk kid who thinks he's more important than the team. Now give me 15 laps. 15? You just said 10. That was before you talked back to me. Now you owe me 20. Keep it up and you'll be running all night. Matt looked toward Coach Sands. He's not going to help you, Jeff said. Get to running. Instead of running, Matt took a step toward Jeff and lowered his voice. You'll be sorry. Then he stepped back and peeled off his practice jersey. I quit, he said, for all to hear. Then he threw his jersey in Jeff's face. Calmly, Jeff caught the jersey before it fell to the floor. Use your head, kid, not your gut. Run the laps, and then we'll work on your dribbling technique. Matt scoffed, spit on the floor, turned, and walked away. The other boys watched him go, shook their heads, and before Jeff knew it, he was surrounded by all the players wanting to know who he was and if he knew who he had just kicked off the team. I didn't kick him off, Jeff replied, and personally, I don't care who he is. To me, he's just a quitter, and I don't have time in my life anymore for quitters. Coach Sands blew his whistle and ordered the boys into some basic drill work. Jeff sidled over to him and sheepishly asked, So, who is that kid, and what sort of problems have I caused you? Coach Sands peered at Jeff over his glasses with a slight twinkle in his eyes. Matt is the superintendent's son, and I'd say you just bought us a whole peck of problems. Jeff cursed under his breath. I'm sorry. I certainly didn't expect that sort of reaction from him. He was traveling all over, so I wanted to help him do it right. The coach interrupted him. You can't help someone who does not want to be helped. Then he looked Jeff squarely in the face. But I expect you already know that, don't you? Jeff blinked in surprise. The coach chuckled. People in small towns have long memories. I did a little checking, and it turns out my neighbor was on your high school team, the one you quit. Name's Dave. Jeff smiled in chagrin. Dave Wilson. Yeah, I'm sure he remembers me. How is he these days? Ornery, a bit alcoholic, and twice divorced. Other than that, he's a nice guy. Jeff laughed. I'll have to visit him sometime. Tell him how much I appreciate him spilling my beans. The coach said, The truth was due to come out sometime. Jeff nodded. Anyway, I'm sorry. Not as sorry as you may be tomorrow when we meet with the superintendent. Jeff gulped. Meet with him? Do we have to? Coach Sands' lips twitched in amusement. Her. Excuse me? Her. The super is a woman. A rather mean one at that. She's not going to be very happy with us for kicking her son off the team. We didn't kick him off. He quit. I know, but that's the way Matt is going to tell it, so that's what she'll believe happened until we set her straight, I reckon. I reckon I'll get a phone call from her tonight. Good thing I got that caller ID thing. He laughed and slapped Jeff on the back. Don't look so downtrodden. This'll be fun. Things were boring around here until you showed up. Before Jeff could reply, the coach blew his whistle and gathered the players around him. He introduced Jeff and told them that they were to listen to him during practices. Yeah, because if we don't, we'll end up like Matt, one of the players grumbled. Only if you're a quitter, Coach quickly replied. Are you quitters? No, the team answered. You don't sound too convincing. I'll ask you one more time. Are you quitters? No, the team answered in unison and with fervor. Good. Now hit the showers and I'll see you tomorrow. Jeff began to walk away, but the coach called after him. I'll see you tomorrow too, won't I? Jeff turned and looked the older man in the eyes. He read doubt in their blue depths. How easy it would be just to walk away from this, chalk it up to a bad idea gone sour. He took a deep breath. Sure, Coach. I'll be here. You can bet on it. Again, please read more of Quitter or the other stories that are in State of Georgia and other writings. Thanks again for being with me today. Bye.